Ingrid, you've had many successful collaborations with mathematicians and non-mathematicians alike. Can you describe an example or two of collaborations with non-mathematicians, how the collaborations started, and some of the initial stages of the collaboration, and perhaps how you worked through the language barrier that that we often are faced with?
Yes. So I've been very fortunate in meeting people who were open to collaboration. I mean, without that, it would have been not possible. I've always been very, very curious about things, about how things work, why things are the way they are, and so on. I remember being surprised when I was little that if you drove at night and the street was lighted by neon light, that color seemed to have leached out of things. Something that looked orange in daylight now looked white, because it reflected light the same way that white objects would, because it only had this orange light falling on it. So getting that, understanding that was... And then once you've understood that the colored light changes things, or a colored filter changes things, then later I discovered that if you looked through the green windshield on a car and you looked at the neon light, it still looked orange. I mean, so that was not supposed to be. But then actually that was something my father had trouble explaining to me, that it was because this light was monochromatic. It could either be completely taken away, or what little came through had to still be the same, because nothing else could. So I was always, I mean, I remember this incident because I was little, and because it was so contradictory. But I always was asking about how is this possible, and always trying to figure out. And if something didn't look right, I would see it change with perspective. So, and I love hearing people talk about things they know well. So let me think about some collaboration. So I'm now working with biologists. So that happened because I met this man socially. And I wanted to know what he was doing. He was trying to think of something that he could tell me that would resonate with me. And so he told me on how they had a way of looking at mammalian teeth and trying to look at how complex the chewing surface was. And so I wanted to know how they measured that. And so a whole conversation came from that. And in the end, I said, well, we might have ways of doing that slightly differently, and that might turn out to be more robust. Would he be interested in pursuing that? And he said yes. And I said, well, I had a postdoc coming, and so on. And so I said we should try to do a follow-up visit. It's like two business people saying we should meet for lunch. I mean, so and we did follow up. And so I did go. I drove to Long Island. He's at Stony Brook. He was at Stony Brook then. He's now in Finland. And if he had been in Finland then, it would have been not possible. But it was at Stony Brook, and so I drove over, and we stayed over with friends, and I took my postdoc, and we discussed things, and indeed things seemed to be more amenable. And so then you take it to the next step. And there has to be this curiosity and this willingness to try to make something work, and you never promise too much. You say, let's look into this. It might be interesting. It might be that we can build a tool that would make it more easier to compute, that it would be less and we can understand more. In that process you already are learning each other's language, and I thought it could lead to interesting things, but at the very first sight of it, the very first application we did was what I call mathematics off the shelf. I mean, mathematics we knew about, we just had to articulate exactly what it was they wanted and talk with them, but then we knew these concepts existed. I mean, we had curvature, we had some local averages of curvature and so on. So we could do all that. And then, but it had to be implemented, but we were willing to invest that. But then during that conversation, other things came up. They said, oh, if you can do this, there are these other problems, these fundamental problems in our field, and so it keeps being a conversation, and listening and saying, oh, but you were interested in that. Have I understood you right? Is this what you would like to do? And then if this is what you would like to do, maybe we could try to tackle that. I mean, and so in the end, the problem that emerged was not exactly the problem. It never is the case that people who come with the application can describe to you the thing you're going to work on, even if they think they come with a very precise question. I mean, it's never as stupid as the example I'm going to give now, but I mean, you could imagine them coming to you with an integral they can't compute. I mean, it never is that, but it never is that integral. Of course you can compute the integral. It never is that. I mean, you always need to start digging. Where did this come from, and so on. And then it turns out it always is that at a deeper level than where they thought, you have to start abstracting it. Because they think that in order to talk to a mathematician, they have to do a lot of abstracting themselves to then give you the mathematical question. And that, it turns out, that in my experience is not usually the way it works. I mean, you really have, but you have to invest that time, and you have to really talk with them. And I had a collaboration with people in magnetic resonance imaging, functional magnetic resonance imaging. And there again, I mean, they were interested in having us look at signal analysis, and but they came to me and they said, we want you to use wavelets to analyze this. I said, wait. I mean, wavelets are not a silver bullet. I mean, there's absolutely, I need to know much more about your signal before we're going to use wavelets on it. In the end we did, but in a completely different way than I thought. But I mean, it was really surprising to me that we ended up using wavelets after all. But they took the time. They were willing to take that time. We had 3 months of weekly meetings of an hour or 2 hours before we actually started seeing what we could do and where it could go. And so, and you never know ahead of time where it will go. So, but I'm a very firm believer of the fact that there are interesting mathematical questions in many different corners of our, many different aspects of our life. And engineers have used mathematics to solve many of these questions for a long time. I think mathematicians have a different way of looking at things, and so it's very, very good for mathematicians to be involved. And engage. And I think, I mean, I'm for students who are interested, I'm thinking that it would be good to set up research projects where we make teams of students in mathematics and other fields, where they teach each other. I mean, because we want to even if the mathematical student also to know about this process, about learning from other people and engaging and explaining math to other people and using mathematical thinking and principles. It's something we tell high school students and undergrads all the time, that a math major can lead to so many things. And it's true. I mean, if we look among our alumni, they go in many different directions, and then none of them regret having trained as a math major. They all feel it has been useful to them, even if they haven't used mathematics. But there's no reason. I mean, so we say this, but I think we can really make it work also for working mathematicians, that it's useful to engage with other things and to use the power of mathematics to communicate with, in our communications with people in other fields. And I think it's something we have neglected to do for too long. I think it's one of the reasons that mathematics has this image of being this ivory tower pursuit, of being something that you have to be half a mutant to be able to do. To do in isolation, perhaps. And also you have to be really weird to be good at it. I mean, it's certainly not true, but we need, I think it would be good for mathematics, it would be good for mathematicians, it would be good for the whole community if people had a better understanding of what it is that mathematics is. I mean, look, they spent so many hours in high school on mathematics. It's called mathematics. And most of them hate it at the end, and still have no idea of what mathematics is. Mathematics is not that what we have somehow, through a process I don't quite understand, have the high school teaching evolve into. I mean, it's true that many of the things that are taught in these kind of formulaic ways in the high school books are things that are then useful when you go to engineering or physics or mathematics. But the formulaicness of it is so strange, so different, so divorced from what mathematics really is. And that is what people retain.
Yes.
And I mean, and I think by having, well, that's my belief, that by having mathematics more engaged with disciplines, that we will get away from that, and it will be a good thing.
So this seems a wonderful answer to wish our conversation could go on much longer. You have told us not only how a mathematician works, what attracts them to problems, but also you have given us assignment for the future. So anyway, I thank both of you very much
Okay.
for this conversation. And
well, thank you.